Hello artists, and welcome to your Fiber Art Center test. In this test you are going to show Mrs. Miller that you can do 4 basic skills. These skills are: can you thread a needle on your own without any help from me? Can you tie your yarn in a knot? Can you create a whip stitch and a running stitch? A running stitch looks a little bit like feet walking, and it is similar to what you have done in weaving. Weaving, as we remember, goes over, under, over, under. This is very similar, where your needle and thread will be going over, under, over, under. That is just the basic running stitch. A whip stitch looks a little different. A whip stitch starts in the back and continues in the back. You bring it to the front and over, bring it to the front and over. It's almost like you are looping the yarn around through each hole that you make. We will talk about this more, and I'll show you more how to do this in a moment. These are the 4 things you're going to need though. This threading the needle, tying a knot with your yarn, showing me a whip stitch and a running stitch. The way you're going to show me is by completing a test. You're going to get a paper plate, I'm sorry, not a paper plate, a styrofoam plate. It's going to look like this, and you'll write your name and your class on the back. You're going to be stitching or sewing on this plate for your test. This is a test. If you make lots of holes that you were not intending to be there, that's okay. The most important thing is that you are showing me you have practiced and can now independently do these things on your own, those 4 important things. If you can't do those 4 things on your own, you'll just keep practicing until you can. The reason for that is because when I have 15 students who are all working on the same, working in the Fiber Art Center, I will not be able to tie your knots for you or thread your needles every time they come undone. You'll need to be able to do this independently. Plus, it's really cool when you can do things on your own without needing somebody else to do it for you. That's pretty cool. Now, the first thing we're going to talk about is threading. We're going to do knot first. So back in the yarn center, you'll choose a long piece of yarn, probably about as long as your arms can stretch out, like as if you were a bird. That's a good length to start with. I've kind of rolled mine up so that it's easier to see. To make a knot, those of you who know how to make a knot already, that's great. If you don't, need a little reminder, here it is. To make a knot with 1 piece of yarn, you simply take the end of that piece of yarn and make a loop. So I'm going to make a small loop. I don't know if you can see that. It looks a little bit like a little circle there. The tail, I made this loop, the tail goes over, and now the tail, I'm going to move this a little closer so you can see. The tail is now going to go under and through the loop. So I'm going to take this little tail and scooch it underneath and pull. And there is a knot. I'm not going to pull it too tight. Now, you may need to do a double knot, and that's okay too. I'm going to go around my fingers, take the little tail, and make it go through the loop again. As I pull, I'm going to try to get that knot and train that knot to go right where the other one was. So now I've got a nice big knot. So you're going to practice this until you get it, until you feel like, yep, I got a good knot, I can do this. That's going to be very important in every sewing project you work on. Next, threading your needle. Now there are lots of ways of threading a needle. Your grandma or your mom or somebody in your family who sews may have put the bit of yarn in the end of their mouth to wet it, made the point, and put it through the yarn, through the eye of the needle that way. Can you see? That's called the eye of the needle. It's like a little hole, and that is where your thread or your yarn goes through. Our job is to get the yarn through that eye, through the eye of the needle. And so what I'm gonna do is I could wet it at the sink. We're not gonna put them in our mouths, that's kind of gross. But you can kind of fold the yarn over a little bit, make a little fold, pinch it in your fingers and kind of ooch, ooch, ooch it through. And then use your other hand to pull the yarn through, like that. You should be able to do that. If that doesn't work, if that feels like that takes too much time, there are several other ways you can also thread a needle. You can also use one of my little helper papers. It looks like a little V, or a little birdie, okay? There's a purple fold part, and then there's the open part where it opens like a V. You're gonna put the end of your string in that little V right at the bottom, so it looks like this. Now it's closed. Luckily, these are going to fit together just fine. So if I turn this and I put my little piece of paper right through, I'll be able to pull my needle, or pull my yarn right through the needle there. See, that was so easy. Your needle and your thread will get loose from one another pretty often, and that's okay. Don't worry. Don't panic. It's okay. So if you can do this and do it over and over again, you're set. You're going to be doing great. Now, I'm going to take a quick pause so I can get ready to show you how we're going to start a whip stitch and a running stitch.